You're tuned into What We Need to Know with Andrea Isaacs, Michael Gaeta, and Larry Pearlman. Andrea Isaacs, on the cutting edge in the field of emotional intelligence. A trustworthy guide, her students have called her a spiritual teacher extraordinaire. Dr. Michael Gaeta, a visionary teacher, clinician, and writer in the field of natural health care. He is an acupuncturist, nutritionist, and herbalist, and lectures nationally on holistic healing and natural medicine. And Larry Pearlman, who has forged a highly successful business career in corporate America while also serving as a spiritual teacher and mentor by embodying spiritual principles in his everyday life. Co-hosts this exploration of dialogue, integrity, and expanding awareness with a wide range of new paradigm leaders. And now, here's What We Need to Know.
Welcome to Evolution in Consciousness. As you just heard, if you were listening, I'm Larry Pearlman, your host. And, I was just talking to my guest this week, which I'll introduce in a moment, about all I get to do is have a great time talking to people who are experiencing this new evolution in consciousness, who are moving from the consciousness of separation to the consciousness of oneness. And I don't know if I could find a better job. Well, I guess if they paid me for it, that would be better. Anyway, our sponsor is Sunrise Ranch. It's a dynamic spiritual community that's been at the forefront of this movement since 1945. Currently, it also serves as a leading conference and retreat center in Loveland, Colorado. My guest today that I just referred to is Jason Gregory. Jason is the author of Way of the Weirdo. And Jason grew up with the comforts of the West and then chose to live a more humble existence in Asia, and that moved him into an exploration of consciousness and the world within rather than the world without. He continues to focus his energy on self-realization in the spirit of evolving creation, which fits right into our show, while dismantling the illusion of separation. So welcome, Jason.
Hello, Larry. Good afternoon over there, I believe.
Yeah, I forgot to mention, Jason is in Australia. It's 4 o'clock in the morning there. So you can see that he is a weirdo, anybody that would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And, we
I
might
love
as well...
these early mornings.
Yeah. We might as well go right to... I'll just mention, anybody who wants to call in, we would love to have you call in. Jason would like to have your comments, your questions, as would I. And the number, get a pencil. Okay, here it comes. 877-230-3062. So please feel free to call in with questions and comments. Let's go right to the title of the book, Jason, Way of the Weirdo. In your first chapter, or maybe it's even in the introduction, you say that the proper response to being called a weirdo is, thank you for the compliment. So why do you say that? What is a weirdo?
Well, a weirdo is someone who sees the world differently. Someone who is exploring not only the outer but the inner worlds within themselves. There are many people out there who have been called weirdos their whole life for, either, I don't know, the right or the wrong reasons, but usually because they're not in the same train of thought as the masses. That's usually what a weirdo is. We just have to look at the word weird. Weird is something that is strange to its environment, which is basically what we're seeing in the world at the moment. Is we're seeing a lot of people who are increasingly becoming strange to their environment, becoming a weirdo, so to speak.
Yeah, I was drawn to the title of your book because ever since I was relatively young, I've always thought I was a little bit weird, and I was always kind of proud of that. And so I absolutely resonate with that feeling. And my hope is, and actually my observation, as we talked about a little bit off the air here, is that it's changing. As the paradigm changes, those of us who are thought of as weird are going to become the norm. I don't know that we'll ever be totally normal, but the norm will change from a consciousness of individualism, separatism, got to get mine, got to watch my back, all that kind of stuff, into a different consciousness.
Well, that weirdo consciousness is slowly developing within a lot of beings on this planet, and it's kind of funny. I was with a good friend yesterday, and just watching him in his weird state, it was almost like Neo in the Matrix. Mm-hmm. Someone who could see through the veil of the illusion while still amongst our brothers and sisters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just beautiful seeing what is real and what isn't. First for oneself, and then out in the world around us.
Yeah, definitely.
I also love the fact that in your book you point out that it's not about setting up a dichotomy or setting up any kind of a conflict between the new group, the weirdos, if you will, people with a new consciousness versus people with the old consciousness, but rather seeing anybody who is perhaps still in the old paradigm for who they are and seeing them with unconditional love and not feeling that there's a conflict there.
Well, I think that's one of the most important things, because a lot of people who take their own steps in their own individual evolution sometimes get deluded with their own, I don't know, their own arrogance. And when they look at other people who maybe not as aware of who they are and their place in the universe. But I always root myself in that I once came from that place of ignorance of who I was. Mm-hmm. So I always try and relate. I like to stay connected with society in that way, even if I don't resonate with their belief systems or what is important to them, but still stay connected to them, because they are just human beings who are connected to all. We are all connected literally as one. So like you said, that unconditional state of love, we can't put boundaries on that. If you're a weirdo and you think that you are separate from humanity, then maybe you're not truly a weirdo, because you would recognize still in those people that they are you and you are them.
Yeah, well put. And I this term unconditional love, I'd love to explore that with you a little bit, because if we think of love, so often what people do in the name of love is anything but. And so maybe you could speak to what is unconditional love and why is it key to the new consciousness, and what does it look like?
What does it look like? Yeah, that's a great question. But I suppose, how do we view love in this world? We usually view love as in we have our family, our children, like our husband and our wife and our children, and then outside of that, anything, well, you have your friends, but anyone who is not part of your life literally isn't in this love circle that you've built. It's almost a narrowed version of love. It's a conditioned state of love. You can ask parents, would they share that same love with their children for another family? And they would say, why would that happen? And for me, it's like, why wouldn't that happen? Like, I feel to embrace everybody, not to separate. I don't have children, but I know people who do have children and do embrace other parents' children around the planet, because they're in that unconditional state. There's no box that they've built within their mind. We live in a paradigm where we've built prisons within our mind. And love at this moment in our time is conditioned love, but we're stepping slowly out of that box to understand that they're actually, the only thing that separates us literally is everything we've learned along the way in our existence. And that's all there is. Everything else is illusory. So if we peel those layers back of what's learned, what is left? And that's where you find that beauty in that unconditional state.
Yeah, my own belief is that there is no such thing as conditional love. It's not love if it's conditional. And yes. The other term I think doesn't apply to love is directional. Like I'll love you, but I'm not going to love him, and then it's not love.
That's well put, Larry. Well, look at all of human existence. We all come into conflict in our own way with some other human being, but there's that lack of empathy, the lack of compassion, that lack of forgiveness that we could shine upon someone who we may view as our enemy. But when you're in that unconditional state, the biggest strength in the world is forgiveness. It doesn't matter if what the other human being has done to you. If that forgiveness is not there, then you see with dirty eyes, so to speak. Forgiveness is a key emotion in an unconditional state. And like you said, there is no such thing as a conditioned state of love. That's actually if that's coming from fear, that's the illusory side of our being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is interesting how fear, the power of fear, can take something as beautiful as love and actually convert it. I mean, that to me is where you get jealousy, envy, ownership. All of those emotions are the power of love distorted through fear into something else.
Exactly. Well, that's where the ego comes in. When we look at the psyche of man, the ego perpetuates a separate existence, which implies fear. But within that, the mind is mischievous because the mind the ego will pick up concepts and ideas to say to yourself, this is what it is to love. This is how you love. But in truth, it's just accumulated ideas to perpetuate your own existence as an individual being in this world. That's sort of what's happening within the psyche of humans at the moment, is they can't step out of that idea they have built around themselves. And in that idea they've built around themselves, that's the way that they perceive love. Like, say, if I was a Christian, what would happen within the psychology of me would be, if I was to come across a Muslim man or woman, there would be an instant reaction to them, not out of love, but out of fear, out of my identity, out of my separate view of existence. That's what would happen. And that happens massively within nations. We see that, like, we see the way, especially in the West, the way we view third world countries, the way we view Arab nations. There is that built-in mode of thinking, which is a separate mode of thinking that's not built on love, but we've built a conditioned love into that. Not, like you said, there is no such thing as conditioned love, but we are operating from those modes of thinking because we are believing that that is who we are. I'm Australian, I'm a male, I'm whatever, spiritual. These are all boxes I've built. And if we've built boxes for ourselves and we are operating out of those and judging others, that is not love, that is fear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. One of the best things I ever did probably was when I was 60 years old in 2007. I joined the Peace Corps and went to Ghana and lived in a little village for 2 years. And it was taking all the external boxes that I knew, even though I had some spiritual thoughts about how, I'm not really in these boxes. But the fact is you're in them to some extent externally. And when you go to a totally different culture, different language, different money, different, and you're the only one there that you don't know anybody else, then all the boxes are gone. And you find yourself naked and hopefully unashamed in the midst of a new culture, and you begin to look at people without the lenses because you're living with them. It's not like you're just noticing them on the way through. And I think it would be a wonderful experience for just about everybody on the planet to do that, because it leads to understanding. And for me, it led to the real knowing. I always had an intellectual knowing, but it led to the real knowing that they're no different. People are no different. When you get down to what matters, we are all the same. And you eliminate all those filters and all those boxes, and you see the truth of the individual, and you say, hey, that's just like me.
Yeah. That's it. I think Terence McKenna, he mentioned something exactly to what you were saying. He was mentioning it in a different form, whereas he was kind of trying to relate to people. The best way for especially humans in the West to evolve is just to put yourself out of your comfort zone and just drop yourself in Africa, drop yourself in India. And what that does is it rewrites your software within your consciousness, because then you've totally stepped out of what is your own box, and now you are slowly learning more about something new. But it's actually, like you said, Larry, when you went to